I want to thank the Institute for Human-Animal Connection and the other organizations here at University of Denver. A lot of voices to speak on this issue, an issue in which all of us have come to it at different points in time and from different experiences, and have also had different reactions, and we're trying to sort of think through this. So just to sort of situate myself, I'm a historian. So I love documents. I like to think about dates. I like to think about the ways in which dates are used to support particular kinds of evidence and arguments. So in terms of the documents attached to the issue around the Canada geese, all I can say is that I have nerded it out. And I have an entire binder of all of the documents. I pay attention to language, I pay attention to the words that people use, the consistency of the words that they use. In short, I love to do discursive analysis. So being at an Institute of Higher Learning, this resonates. So it's from that perspective, I'm going to zoom in on documents this evening. Okay, I want to begin with a date. On June 27th, 2019, the Denverite broke the first story about the forcible removal of geese from city parks with the headline that many of us have read: Denver is capturing geese from city parks to be killed and given to hungry families. By breaking the news, the general public became aware of what had commenced 3 weeks prior. The weekend also marked the emergence of public outcry against Denver Parks and Recreation's action and contract with, it's a long title, United States Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services. Okay, that's more than just a multisyllabic word. The outcry took place on social media, which provided a means to gather information and organize. A public protest ensued, taking place next to Lily Pond in Washington Park on July 6th. Again, I highlight June 27th, as it marks when the public at large became aware of the forced removal of the geese. At the public gathering in Wash Park, there is very little information to go on, except for calling upon officials for the failure to be transparent and accountable. Canada Geese Protection Colorado, of which I'm a co-founder and a core leader in, continues to call for holding our public officials accountable and to establishing public forums where issues of management, maintenance, population, and living with fellow sentient beings can be discussed. I want to focus on the vision set forward by Mayor Hancock as a measure for how the geese issue has been handled. And here we're going to switch to the initiative, Welcome to Transparent Denver. And we're going to think about the definitions that are used. Mayor Hancock supports transparency and accountability as the foundation to his Transparent Denver initiative. In the website dedicated to his initiative, Transparent Denver is characterized at the very top: open, visible, and accessible. Now let's look at the definitions on the website. Transparency is defined as access to information about what is really happening. And accountability is defined as ways to hold decision makers accountable for the decisions we make. Sounds reasonable, right? The webpage emphasizes transparency of financial commitments, investments and debts, city budget, contracts, and property. These succinct definitions provide a guideline to gauge how documents and protocol, motivation and intent has been followed or sidelined in the case of city electing lethal methods for the park's Canada geese. I will be looking at 3 documents, not in their entirety from the standpoint of public engagement. And I have all of these documents with me if anyone would like to read them afterwards. Okay, we're going to switch gears to the first. This is the very long title of the contract between the City of Denver as well as USDA APHIS Wildlife Services. I'm going to be calling it the Cooperative Service Agreement. You have it there. Okay, so let's just take the Cooperative Service Agreement, which is dated October 22nd, 2018. Now, I'm only going to single out attachment B here, which provides a financial plan with a price tag for what took place. Now, this does not oversee the actual, okay, so you have a tier. We have a situation in which the city contracts with USDA APHIS Wildlife Services, who then ends up soliciting vendors for the actual processing of the meat. So that's a separate thing. And that has nothing to do with the city per se. Okay, so just for the price tag overseeing that relationship, you'll see the amount of $149,722.43. Let's not forget the 43 cents. Okay, there has been public outcry against the city for not informing the public at large as to how taxpayer dollars are being used. Let's consider that taxpayers played a role in the removal of Canada geese from 4 parks this past year. And taxpayers will continue to play a role by removing more Canada geese from more parks slated over the next 2 years. The point being, Denver Parks and Recs has an ongoing lethal approach currently to wildlife control, which we are paying for. Therefore, we have a right to discuss the options. Now, there's going to be talk in terms of it's such a low amount, there's no need to actually bring this in front of the public. However, let's look at the next document. Denver Parks and Recreation, Public Engagement, Communication, and Notification Policy. Shorthand of Connor McCann. Right? Okay. The purpose of the policy is intended to create standards that the Denver Parks and Recreation Administration can follow to ensure that public input and the dissemination of information is a top priority. Again, it sounds reasonable. It states, the overall goal in creating this policy is to develop a better informed public, to encourage participation, and to work collaboratively with our constituents to hear their ideas and collect their feedback. The public engagement policy contains a tiered approach to public outreach, quote, in an effort to set standards for identifying and prioritizing DPR projects and programs and the appropriate level of public engagement and communication to support them, end of quote. Tiers 1, 2, and 3 follow, and then the last section of the policy states that for certain issues, no public outreach is required. Now, it contains examples of issues, quote, that do not automatically require any public outreach, and which is necessary to keep the department functioning as efficiently as possible. Examples include minor park maintenance and construction items, minor park and recreation center improvements or renovations, day-to-day operational decisions, permit distraction, and volunteer programs. Now, it is evident that minor day-to-day events would not require public input. Okay. And this solid policy excludes minor administrative issues, which a government agency has delegated authority to address. The public would not expect to be consulted on decisions regarding these minor administrative actions. However, the extermination of the park's wildlife as the conclusive means of controlling population is not listed as an exception. On the contrary, the 2019 lethal removal of Canada geese warranted public notification. Finally, let's look at the 2019 Denver Parks and Recreation Goose Management Program. Let's consider the program, which was published in early June. Now, Marlon Racy ended up mentioning the depredation permit went into effect in early June. The actual date is June 5th, right? With the termination date being December 31st of 2019. Okay, keep that in mind because this is when the chronology becomes very, very messy. I'm not going to be able to talk about it right now, but I'm alluding to it. So the program was published in early June, which coincided with the depredation permit going into effect. Now, the Goose Management Program provides the following guidelines. 1, The GMP acknowledges the importance of garnering public support. On page 13, section 8, entitled Public Support, the document states, besides hazing and egg treatment, the next most important part of a resident Canada Geese management plan is public outreach and support. Highlight, public acceptance of lethal control, partnerships, and assistance from state and federal wildlife agencies and Denver City Council support will also be sought. 2, on page 15, section F, entitled Removal Through Capture and Euthanization, it states, quote, because these measures are, however, subject to much public criticism and opposition, and is a solution that will require yearly maintenance, the final determination to capture and euthanize resident Canada geese at any one park would have to be a decision made and endorsed by the DPR Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director. A decision made by Executive Director of DPR Happy Haynes and Deputy Executive Director Scott Gilmore does not override the need for public acceptance and input, period. To conclude, my focus on definitions, guidelines, and timeframe does not undo what has been done. DPR is expecting to have a renewed depredation permit go into effect beginning in March 2020. The concerned residents living around Washington Park, Sloan's Lake, Garfield Lake Park, and City Park were not given the opportunity to engage in a public discussion. The communities and neighborhood associations living around Berkeley, Rocky Mountain, Barnum Park, Overland Pond, and Harvey Park should be given a meaningful opportunity to discuss and understand the non-lethal options that were studied, attempted, and rejected. The general public should not find out when news breaks. This does not comply with Mayor Hancock's commitment to uphold our city as transparent Denver. Thank you.